Strip away everything you've been taught, everything you've learned about how to behave in polite society, everything your conscience has installed to govern your impulses. Strip away the social performance and the self-presentation and the carefully constructed identity. What remains? Sigmund Freud had a name for it, the ID. And his account of what the ID is and how it works is one of the most honest and unsettling descriptions of human nature ever proposed. The ID is the oldest part of the psyche, the original foundation from which the ego and superego develop, but which itself remains unchanged, undeveloped, and unaffected by experience and learning throughout the entire lifespan. Every human being enters the world as pure ID. The newborn has no ego, no social awareness, no capacity to defer gratification, no understanding of others' needs. It simply experiences states and demands their immediate resolution. This is the ID in its pure, undiluted form, and it never grows up. The structures that develop around it become more sophisticated, but the ID itself remains what it always was. Freud characterized the id's mode of functioning as the primary process, a radically different kind of mental operation from the logical, reality-oriented secondary process of the ego. The primary process knows no time. Past, present, and future are undifferentiated. It knows no negation. Contradictions can coexist without generating tension. It knows no logic. Cause and effect are irrelevant. It knows no morality. There are only wants and their potential satisfactions. The ID cannot tell the difference between a real experience and a vividly imagined one. It responds to mental representations with the same urgency it responds to external reality. The id's entire organization, such as it is oriented toward a single principle, Freud's pleasure principle, the immediate discharge of tension through the attainment of what is desired. Hunger generates tension, eating discharges it. Sexual desire generates tension, gratification discharges it. Aggressive impulse generates tension, expression or domination discharges it. The ID has no interest in how this discharge is achieved, no concern for consequences, no awareness of other people except as potential instruments or obstacles in the pursuit of satisfaction. This description might sound extreme, a caricature of human motivation. But Freud's point was precisely that we are not, at our core, the rational agents we like to imagine ourselves to be. The ID is not some distant aberration, present only in psychopaths or in the grip of extreme emotion. It is the constant background pressure that all adult psychological structure is working to manage, channel, and make socially viable. The person who cuts off another driver in traffic, not deliberately, but because the aggression impulse found its moment before the ego could intervene. The individual who eats the entire container of ice cream that was meant to last a week. The person who says something in anger that they spend years trying to explain away. These are ID moments, moments when the pleasure principle briefly overcame the reality principle. The id's impulses manifest most purely in dreams, where the ego's defenses are lowered and primary process functioning takes over the production of mental imagery. But they also appear in symptoms, in parapraxis, slips of the tongue and other errors, in addiction, in impulsive and self-destructive behavior, in the compulsions that persist despite the person's full awareness of their irrationality. Wherever behavior seems driven by forces that the person cannot voluntarily control or explain, the ID is likely implicated. Freud was not, despite occasional misreading, advocating for the id's liberation. His view was that civilization required the regulation and sublimation of ID impulses, and that this regulation, while costly, was both necessary and ultimately in the individual's interest. What he was arguing against was the pretense that the ID doesn't exist, the comfortable illusion that human beings are fundamentally rational, that our stated reasons are our real reasons, and that the parts of ourselves we find most difficult to acknowledge are simply not there. They are there. Understanding them is the beginning of wisdom. Subscribe to Psychology. Theories explained for more psychology breakdowns every week.